All eyes on President Trump as he embarks on a five-nation trip to Asia, now set to arrive in Japan in just a couple of hours from now. I'm Julie Banderas. Good evening, everyone. This is the Fox Report. President Trump leaving for Japan after visiting the Pearl Harbor Memorial in Hawaii on Saturday. He is gearing up for a series of crucial meetings there amid rising tensions with North Korea. The president will be spending much of the day alongside Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, as the two world leaders are scheduled to have lunch and play a round of golf, as they did in Florida during their first meeting. Despite the casual setting, North Korea's nuclear ambitions are expected to be a major topic of conversation. Meantime, Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live now in Tokyo to pick up the story from there. Hello, John.
Julio Gazamas on a Sunday morning from just outside of Tokyo. We're at the Yokota Air Base, which is just west of Tokyo. This is where the president's going to touch down in about 2.5 hours' time. The first order of business will be an address to the troops, 14,000 of them stationed here at Yokota. Behind me, a contingent of Marines who are stationed at Okinawa. We're here on the mainland. They were doing some training up at Camp Fuji, and they're transiting back through Yokota back to Okinawa. So they will be part of this evening's goings on as well. The president took off a little while ago from Honolulu after spending a day there. He is going to be on a five-nation tour of the Asia-Pacific Rim. This is going to be the longest presidential tour of this area of the world since George H.W. Bush, and that was some 25 years ago. The president will start here in Japan, then he's going to go to South Korea. From South Korea, he will go to Da Nang for the APEC conference in Vietnam, then on to the capital city of Hanoi. From there, he'll go to Beijing for a couple of days with Xi Jinping, and then he'll finish off by going to Manila in the Philippines for the annual ASEAN conference. The president spent an entire day in Hawaii yesterday. He gave an address to the troops that were stationed there, where he touched down and as well visited the USS Arizona Memorial, where he and the First Lady Melania Trump placed a wreath into the water above the remains of the USS Arizona, also threw some PKK petals into the water, as is tradition as well. His chief of staff, John Kelly, was there as well, and taking in the scene there in front of the memorial wall. His daughter, Ivanka Trump, was here in Japan on Friday, kind of laying the groundwork for this trip. She spoke at a women's empowerment conference in Tokyo and also had dinner with the Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe. The president, as you mentioned, Julie, will be spending much of today with Shinzo Abe. In fact, almost all of it, besides this address to the troops here at Yokota Air Force Base. He's going to have lunch with Shinzo Abe, then get together and hit the little white ball around with both Abe and Hideki Matsuyama, who is ranked number 4 in the world in professional golf. So the president getting off to a bit of a recreational start today, but he's got a lot of heavy lifting ahead of him with a lot of important talks on security in the Indo-Pacific region, as well, particularly with North Korea at the center of it all, as well as trade. The president not particularly happy with the fact that the U.S. is running trade deficits with Japan, huge one with China, and with South Korea as well. So those agenda items will be all high on the table. Julie?
John, what are we hearing about a meeting with Putin and a possible visit to the DMZ?
They still haven't made up their minds yet whether there's going to be a meeting with Putin during this trip, and that would happen in Da Nang in Vietnam during that APEC summit. You'll remember when the president was in Hamburg, Germany for the G20, he had a lengthy meeting with Putin. It's possible they could meet again, but nobody is saying right now. He is not going to go to the DMZ. That's one thing we do know. He's going to make a visit to Camp Humphreys in South Korea, and there's just not enough time to do both Camp Humphreys and do the DMZ, so they decided that this time around at least he's not going to visit the DMZ. There's also some question that with tensions as high as they are between the United States, South Korea, and North Korea, that the U.S. president visiting the DMZ may be seen as a provocation. So that's not on the agenda for this trip. Julie?
All right, John Roberts in Tokyo, thank you very much. Meantime, a sneak peek at how the Secret Service is prepping for the president's trip to Asia. A former agent says it is a big deal for the Secret Service, even calling it a mini Super Bowl. Listen.
These are like little mini Super Bowls for the Secret Service. And I can tell you the logistics alone are a nightmare. One of the big keys to success on this is how good the locals are at securing their people, and the countries he's going to, they're very good at it.
Those comments as the Secret Service tweets these pictures showing them load up the so-called Best and the Beast, they call it, the president's car, which can actually withstand a number of different attacks. House Republicans are ready to take the next step in their effort to overhaul our tax system. On Monday, the House Ways and Means Committee will start the markup process on the bill released earlier this week. Democrats are condemning the bill. They say that it'll only benefit the wealthiest Americans and corporations, while meantime some Republicans are also raising a red flag. Vice President Mike Pence hitting the road today to drum up support for the plan in Pennsylvania.
The best way to grow jobs in this country is to give the American people more of their hard-earned dollars in their own pockets and to give businesses more resources to invest in ways that will create jobs.
Garrett Tenney is live from Washington to pick up the story from there. So, Garrett, several House Republicans have already said that they're going to vote against the GOP's tax plan if changes are not made, correct?
Yeah, these are largely Republicans from states that have high taxes in state and local, and where real estate is more expensive. And that's because, as it stands now, the GOP plan eliminates deductions for state and local taxes, meaning folks in high tax states such as New York, New Jersey, California, amongst others, would, at least in that regard, be paying more in taxes than they do right now. The GOP plan also lowers the cap on the mortgage interest rate deduction from $1 million to $500,000, which going forward would hit folks buying homes in areas that are more expensive. Because of those changes, 5 House Republicans have come out against the bill and are now pushing for changes.
I believe that the state and local tax deduction should stay entirely. There are some people who want to eliminate the state and local tax deduction entirely. I look at the idea of eliminating the state and local tax deduction as a geographic redistribution of wealth, because you're taking money from a place like New York to provide deeper tax cuts elsewhere.
The issue for Republican leadership is they need to find a way to essentially balance the budget here by finding a way to pay for the tax cuts that they're proposing, and eliminating these deductions is one way that they're hoping to do that, at least for now. Julie.
How open is the GOP leadership to making changes to its current plan?
Well, on Friday, Kevin Brady, who's the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee that puts this plan together, said he's learned to never say never when it comes to negotiations on tax reform. And they've already made a number of technical modifications and slight adjustments to the plan since it was introduced on Thursday. But at this point, it's also a race against the clock to get this passed, because outside interest groups are also going through this plan to see how it affects them, and they're going to start lobbying efforts for those changes to be able to benefit them. And at the same time, Republicans are facing some strong opposition from Democrats, including the top Democrat on the House Ways and Means Committee, who argue the GOP plan will explode the deficit.
There might be the sugar high of growth for a year or so, but you're going to be stuck with debt that's going to be passed on to these children for a tax cut for people at the very top.
Despite all of those hurdles, House leadership is still optimistic they'll be able to pass something over to the Senate by Thanksgiving. And from there, Senate leaders are hopeful but a bit more cautious that they'll be able to get it to the president's desk by Christmas. Julie.
As he calls it a big Christmas gift, we'll have to see if we're all going to get it. Yeah. Garrett Tenney, thank you.
You got it.
Vice President Pence will also appear on Sunday Morning Futures tomorrow to talk more about tax reform. Here's a preview of his interview with Maria Bartiromo. Watch.
The top 10% pay right now more than 70% of the tax. So are you actually cutting taxes on people who don't pay tax? Shouldn't you be cutting taxes on the people who pay tax?
Well, I think the president very much wants to see this tax cut focused on middle class Americans. And we believe we're going to see a significant tax reduction for working families. When you take the standard deduction for couples and take that to $24,000, the first $24,000 in income is tax-free. Now, the House bill doesn't raise the rate. I know the math that you talk about, but it doesn't raise the rate from 39.6.
But 45.6 is raising the rate.
The president wants to see us lower the rates on working families, expanding the per-child tax credit, getting rid of death taxes once and for all. We think is going to benefit the ability to transfer businesses and family farms from one generation to the next. But the intention here is not to raise taxes, Maria. The intention here, though, is to focus the tax relief on the middle class.
You can catch that entire interview tomorrow. Sunday Morning Futures airs at 10 a.m. Eastern Time right here on the Fox News Channel. Well, the FBI, congressional security, and local police are all investigating after Senator Rand Paul was allegedly assaulted. A scary scene for the Kentucky senator. Basically, a station there is reporting that an ongoing feud with a neighbor may have led to the incident. Meantime, witnesses reportedly say that they, saw that Paul was mowing the lawn outside his home in Bowling Green Friday when it actually happened, and he did suffer a minor injury. Police arrested 59-year-old Rini Boucher. He remains in jail on a $5,000 bond. Right now, New Yorkers are remembering the 8 people killed in Tuesday's horrific terror attack, and the suspect's sister is speaking out what she is saying about his plans. Plus, authorities here in New York City are beefing up security ahead of Sunday's marathon, despite saying that there is no reason to worry. We have a live report on all of this coming up next.
Our pride, our strength will be on full display on Sunday at the marathon. There are no credible and specific threats against the marathon or against New York City. You will see a lot of police presence. If you see something, say something.
Military officials say a U.S. service member has been killed in Afghanistan. The unidentified military member died from wounds sustained during operations in and around Kabul. A top military general now mourning the loss, saying, and I'm quoting, "On behalf of U.S. forces, Afghanistan, we offer our deepest condolences to the family of our fallen brother." Meantime, back here in New York City, authorities are stepping up security ahead of Sunday's marathon. Some 50,000 runners plan on attending the event, an annual event that brings millions of spectators as well, which comes just days after 8 people were killed in the city's deadliest terror attack since 9/11. And now the suspect's sister is speaking out, reportedly saying her brother wanted to come home to Uzbekistan, but never actually spoke badly of the U.S. Brian Yanis is live in Lower Manhattan with more. He's been covering the story all week long. And Brian, the investigation goes on as New Yorkers continue to pay their respects for the victims.
Good evening, Julie. That's right. We are here at the scene like we have been all week, where there has been a memorial with 8 crosses for the 8 victims mowed down by this terrorist. Now, today was the wake for a Darren Drake. He's the 32-year-old New Jersey man who was mowed down, one of the 2 Americans killed in this attack. There were 5 Argentines that were killed and 1 Belgian. Now, Darren Drake's wake today was huge crowds. He gets buried on Monday. Now, all of this was as people all day today, bicyclists and runners, have been coming here to pay their respects. We spoke to a Jessica Kleinecht. She is the mother of 3 daughters, and she was with her husband, always going down this same bike path. She talked about having to talk to her daughters about what took place on Tuesday.
It's something I wish I never had to explain to them, and unfortunately, we do. I talked to her about the victims and how they were great people, how we need to honor them by having, appreciating every day that we have here.
Now, this 29-year-old terror suspect, obviously the investigation continues into him. His sister speaking on a radio station saying that she believes her brother was a good guy. She doesn't understand how this happened and that he was, quote, brainwashed. And that kind of focuses on what the investigation is all about right now. There's no doubt that he was self-radicalized and was an ISIS sympathizer. That happened sometime here while he was in the United States since 2010. Authorities also believe he acted alone, but now they're really starting to question friends and other accomplices, perhaps to see if there are any other accomplices or what people may have known about his self-radicalization, Julie.
Yeah, Brian. And how does the NYPD plan on protecting the New York City Marathon tomorrow?
Well, they say it's going to be the tightest security that this marathon has ever seen. We're talking about more observation teams, more sniper teams, double, in fact. They're also going to have blocker vehicles set up all throughout the marathon. We're talking about 26.2 miles through all 5 boroughs, and they say that there's going to be a ton of personnel. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York spoke today.
There will be 2 or 3 times as many people deployed. We'll have thousands of officers on duty this weekend. But I want to stress this is just a precautionary measure. We have no information that points to any issues.
1,000 marathon runners, 2.5 million spectators. Many of these runners will be running with a heavy heart, no doubt, with this on their minds. Julie?
Brian Yannis, thank you. And of course, you'll be covering that for us tomorrow. The 2016 election is still haunting Democrats after a stunning new accusation. The Clinton campaign rigged the primaries. Can the party get back on track? And what will it take to do just that? Plus, ISIS forces are fleeing Iraq and Syria. So what happens when foreign fighters try to return home?
The day, like, I'm just trying to get my life back. If it so be it that I have to go to prison in order to do that, and I'm prepared to do that.
Saudi Arabian defense forces bring down a missile aimed at one of the kingdom's major international airports on the outskirts of the country's capital. Officials say Houthi rebels fired the missiles from Yemen. No damage was reported and flights were not disrupted. However, Saudi forces have intercepted other Houthi missiles before. But this marks the first time that one has actually come so close to a heavily populated area. An ongoing war between the two sides has resulted in the deaths of hundreds of people and the displacement of millions. U.S.-backed forces are making major strides against ISIS, apparently, on the battlefields in Iraq and Syria. And as the terror group loses ground, many members are trying to return to their homes. Benjamin Hall has a story of how some countries are handling that.
The black flag of ISIS drew people from across the world. But now, as the caliphate crumbles, many are trying to return home, posing a major threat. It was returning jihadis who carried out attacks in Paris and Brussels and who arrived hidden among the waves of refugees flowing into Europe. Now it's feared others may follow. This British man, speaking anonymously from a safe house in northern Syria, is one of the many trying to get home.
Like I said, I'm not here to harm anybody. I'm just here to look after my family and live my life.
After attending ISIS training camps, he says he ran away from the terror group and now wants to leave.
The day, like, I'm just trying to get my life back. If it so be it that I have to go to prison in order to do that, and I'm prepared to do that.
And prison does await those who return to the UK after fighting in Syria or Iraq. 400 are already said to have returned, though only 14 have been convicted. But France has a very different approach: eliminate them. It's been widely reported that French special forces actively hunt French jihadis on the battlefield before they come home. Fox News spoke to a former operative in a French jihadi kill squad. He explained why.
It simplifies things. If we kill them abroad, that resolves the problem of what we do when they return. That is what France is doing.
As evidenced by the attacks in Brussels, Martinet says countries cannot take the risk of allowing them back, and that de-radicalization just never works.
Jihadis who have fought in Syria and returned to Europe are like grenades with the pins pulled out. They may well kill at any time.
The US agrees that ISIS fighters should be dealt with in the region, not back home.
If we can prevent them from leaving and we can defeat them here, then that's exactly what we want to do.
Benjamin Hall reporting. Thank you. Well, new reports, former DNC chair Donna Brazile was considering a major shakeup on the Democratic presidential ticket. Her reported reasoning for that, bombshell report coming up. Plus, reaction is pouring into Brazile's claims that Hillary Clinton essentially stole the nomination and rigged the Democratic primary. Our next guest, a reporter for the Washington Examiner, will weigh in on all of this.
Look, this is what we've been waiting for since November the 8th. I think the left is finally looking in the mirror. Donna Brazile's statement is a very clear one. Hillary Clinton stole the nomination inside the DNC.
I'm Julie Banderas, and this is the Fox Report. It's the bottom of the hour. Time now for the top of the news. The Washington Post is reporting former DNC chair Donna Brazile considered using her power to strip Hillary Clinton from the Democratic ticket and replace her with then Vice President Joe Biden. This reportedly in response to Clinton's fainting spell at the September 11th memorial in 2016. Now, remember, she was at the time suffering from pneumonia, saying that her campaign was, quote, anemic and had the odor of failure. All this after Brazile released an excerpt of her new memoir claiming the Democratic primary was effectively stolen from Bernie Sanders and rigged by the Clinton campaign. Ellison Barber in Washington with the details.
Donna Brazil, Hillary Clinton, and the DNC. It's the story most of Washington is talking about. As President Trump headed towards Marine One Friday, he stopped and said this.
You ought to look at Hillary Clinton, and you ought to look at the new book that was just put out by Donna Brazil, where she basically bought the DNC and she stole the election from Bernie.
Criticism is coming from both sides of the aisle after former interim DNC chairperson Donna Brazil published an excerpt of her new book in Politico magazine. It accused the Clinton campaign and the DNC of entering into, in her words, an unethical fundraising agreement before Clinton won the nomination. The agreement in question was leaked to a number of media outlets. First, NBC News. It said in exchange for helping the deeply in debt DNC raise money, staff with Hillary for America would have, quote, joint authority over strategic decisions like staffing, budget, and communications. The agreement said it applied to the general election and not the Democratic primary. It also said the DNC could enter similar agreements with other candidates. Some Democrats say point blank the DNC rigged the election and changes need to be made.
Very quickly, Senator, do you agree with the notion that it was rigged?
Yes. We must bring about real campaign finance reform. We must get rid of the undemocratic system of superdelegates.
According to the Washington Post, the DNC chair and deputy chair both pledged to reform the party in light of these allegations. Tom Perez, the DNC chair, also said that the joint fundraising committees for both campaigns have been shut down. Julie?
All right, let's bring in Melissa Quinn for more on this breaking news report. Reporter for the Washington Examiner. Melissa, thank you for talking to us. So we all know Hillary's book. It's titled What Happened. Brazil might have actually titled her book, I'll Tell You What Happened, because she comes out with this big bombshell with regard to what was actually going on behind the scenes of the Clinton campaign. And she's writing that she seriously contemplated replacing Hillary Clinton as the party's 2016 presidential nominee with then Vice President Biden and Senator Cory Booker in the aftermath of Clinton's fainting spell. Is this a surprise to you and to those in Washington? What's the reaction?
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. I think for a lot of supporters of Bernie Sanders, no, this is not a surprise to them at all. Of course, if you remember, during the primaries and heading into the general election, a lot of supporters of Senator Sanders came out and said that they really felt that the DNC was effectively tipping the scales in Hillary Clinton's favor, ensuring that she went ahead and clinched the nomination. And now what we know from Donna Brazil is that their suspicions are confirmed.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Donna Brazil, she's coming out and revealing that the DNC was rigged by Hillary Clinton in the primary. What do her revelations confirm with regard to the suspicions that many Bernie Sanders supporters actually had regarding the DNC and Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think a lot of them were thinking that the DNC was really working to ensure that she was indeed the Democratic Party's nominee, and that did in fact happen. What is striking from this joint fundraising agreement was that the DNC, or excuse me, Hillary Clinton's campaign had a ton of control over the DNC in terms of who they hired from their communications director. I believe in her op-ed in Politico, the excerpt that was published there, Donna Brazil said that this really answered questions as to why she couldn't so much as send out a press release without sending it to Clinton's campaign headquarters in Brooklyn. And of course, they also had full control over the finances and strategic operations as well. So while the DNC may, and some of Clinton's supporters may say that they did not make these changes or exercise this power until after she clinched the nomination, I think a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters at this point are probably very disappointed, upset, and just don't have a lot of trust in the party as a whole.
The president tweeted about it, too. Here's his tweet. I always felt I would be running and winning against Bernie Sanders, not Crooked H, without cheating. I was right. How does the DNC recover from that?
Well, I think at this point, Tom Perez, the new chairman, really needs to go ahead and make sure that there is unity and trust within the full Democratic Party. What was especially striking about Elizabeth Warren's comments saying that, yes, she did feel that the DNC rigged the primary in Hillary Clinton's favor, is that a lot of Democrats would really love to see her be the party's nominee for president in 2020. And at this point, especially now, since she feels like the DNC acted unethically and is in the wrong here, Tom Perez and the party really need to make sure to build unity and try to rebuild trust with the whole full spectrum of Democrats.
And Elizabeth Warren, she also believed, and you touched on this just now, that the DNC actually rigged the primaries in Clinton's favor. And that would be something that would be on President Trump's side because here he has a Democrat agreeing with him. But then the president actually went on it with Senator Elizabeth Warren earlier this week on a completely unrelated note, calling her Pocahontas at one point. And then, of course, Elizabeth Warren responded in a tweet to which Elizabeth replied, "I understand your desperation to change the subject. At Real Donald Trump, your campaign manager was just indicted for conspiracy against the U.S." So the message here is sort of getting detracted in a way, because here you have a Democrat who believed the DNC rigged the primaries in Clinton's favor, but now she is now bringing up, you know, Paul Manafort and his indictment, which kind of sets the White House back a bit because they have a Democrat who's actually on their side when it comes to the DNC rigging the primary, which is actually a good thing. I mean, do you think that there's any way that perhaps Elizabeth Warren and President Trump maybe could somehow meet in the middle on this particular issue, and maybe the war of words on Twitter put those to rest?
I'm not sure if they can necessarily meet in the middle. Of course, what we're seeing from Elizabeth Warren, who I think would represent more the far left, is that they really are going to be opposed to President Trump and his agenda no matter what. And then when you add in the fact that we have the investigation from numerous congressional committees as well as the Justice Department ongoing, we just saw Robert Mueller file his first charges against Paul Manafort and Rick Gates last week. Unfortunately, I think that it's going to be difficult for them to meet in the middle. Yeah. However, Elizabeth Warren, of course, did stun a lot of people when she said that she felt that the DNC rigged the primaries. But that war of words, I don't think is going to come to an end anytime soon.
All right, wishful thinking on my behalf, I had to ask, though. All right, so the question now is, how does the DNC move forward? And I want your reaction to that after you listen to this comment by the former deputy campaign manager for Martin O'Malley, Liz Smith. Listen.
We know that something that the DNC handled themselves inappropriately in 2016. That was addressed in the DNC chair race this year. And now it's important that we go ahead and focus on how we win in the elections on Tuesday and the elections in 2018. We certainly need to internalize the lessons.
So have Democrats learned a lesson here?
I think that that is the million-dollar question, and we will see how that plays out in 2018 and especially how that plays out in 2020, particularly if we see Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren gain the Democratic presidential nominee in the election year and ultimately challenge President Trump. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be on their toes waiting to see if Tom Perez can go ahead and foster that unity and trust that seems to have been lost last year.
All right. Melissa Quinn, breaking news reporter for the Washington Examiner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Harvey Weinstein potentially facing charges, in fact, could get arrested as police investigate rape claims by one actress, all while another comes forward with details about her own uncomfortable encounter with Weinstein. Plus, New Jersey is getting ready to pick a new governor. More on the implications of that huge race as one candidate tries to sway voters.
First, the other side. First, they left the middle class behind. Then they left the dreams of those who want to get into the middle class behind. And now they've left the truth behind.
Embattled Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein is facing a new criminal investigation. Authorities in New York are now looking into claims by Boardwalk Empire actress Paz de la Huerta, who says Weinstein raped her twice back in 2010. And now another actress, Juliana Margulies, is adding her name to the growing list. Will Carr is in Los Angeles with more. So, Will, how many women now have accused Weinstein of inappropriate behavior?
Well, Julie, the list gets longer every week. So far, more than 70 women, ranging from aspiring actresses to Hollywood superstars to journalists, have all accused Harvey Weinstein of inappropriate acts ranging from unwanted advances to rape. But it's the latest that could potentially lead to a prosecution. Authorities in New York say they're developing a strong criminal case against Weinstein after actress Paz de la Huerta says Weinstein raped her twice back in 2010. Investigators say de la Huerta was articulate about each and every alleged crime, and her account fits within the statute of limitations, but it's still a challenging case.
I will say we have an actual case going forward. If this person was still in New York and it was recent, we would go right away and make the arrest, no doubt. But we're talking about a 7-year-old case, and we have to move forward, gathering evidence first.
Weinstein, a power broker in the movie industry before the allegations erupted, is also being investigated by authorities in both Los Angeles and in Britain, Julie.
And so why hasn't he faced charges for other accusations at this point?
Well, he's definitely been accused of impropriety before, including back in 2015 when he was recorded by a model as part of an NYPD sting operation.
Yesterday you touched my breast.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Just come on, I'm used to that.
Authorities have decided not to charge Weinstein in that case, and he's continued to deny any and all allegations of non-consensual sex. Julie.
All right, well, Carr, thank you.
Phil Murphy has yet to explain to any of us how he's going to keep any of the promises that he has made. How is he going to pay for free pre-K for everyone, whether they can afford it or not? How is he going to pay for the extra $9 billion he wants to put in the school funding formula? How is he going to pay for the free college education he has promised?
Republican Lieutenant Governor Kim Godwano criticizing her competition in the race to become the next New Jersey governor. Right now, polls show Democratic candidate Phil Murphy with a double-digit lead. The heated contest is getting a lot of attention nationwide. Fox News senior correspondent Eric Shawn picks up the story from here.
As New Jersey Governor Chris Christie ends his troubled tenure facing term limits, his legacy may be to hand his state house to a Democrat. Phil Murphy, a multimillionaire former Goldman Sachs executive, has been leading Christie's lieutenant governor, Republican candidate Kim Guadagno, by double digits in the polls, despite Guadagno's focus on the perennial state issue, high taxes.
Thank you very, very much. They're looking at me as the candidate who will lower their property taxes while the other guy has promised to raise their taxes.
The choice couldn't be clearer. On the one hand, more of the same. Another Chris Christie 4 years of failed politics. Of failed politics where the middle class is hollowed out and ravaged.
How's it going, New Jersey?
Murphy brought out the big names to stump for him in the overwhelmingly Democratic state, but one of his proposals has hit a nerve.
Mr. President, not in the state of New Jersey. We will stand up to this president. If need be, we'll be a sanctuary, not just city, but state.
He wants to declare New Jersey a so-called sanctuary state, preventing undocumented immigrants from being deported.
Murphy will have the backs of deranged murderers.
It is an issue Guadagno has stressed.
Phil Murphy's going to raise their taxes and make New Jersey a sanctuary state.
And the ongoing corruption trial of Democratic Senator Bob Menendez adds another uncertainty. If he is convicted and resigns after the inauguration, the new governor would appoint someone to fill his seat.
With the Senate so evenly divided, the outcome of the New Jersey gubernatorial election, if Senator Menendez were to be convicted, could determine the Trump agenda and whether it would move forward with greater ease in the Senate.
Fox News made repeated requests to try and interview Murphy, but without success. So while he attacks Guadagno as a continuation of Governor Christie, she tries to remind New Jersey voters that he's no longer on the ballot. But as shadows say, observers could decide this race. I'm Eric Shawn, Fox News.
11 minutes. That's how long President Trump's favorite form of communication was apparently taken away from him. Our own William LaJeunesse finally has more.
Social media. Without social media, I'm not sure that I would be here talking.
President Trump and Twitter. With 41 million followers, he ranks 21 worldwide. But Thursday night, for 11 minutes, the site shut him down.
When you're looking at a top 25 account, either this person who's very senior or there's a definite breakdown in internal protocol.
Twitter initially claimed the president's feed was inadvertently disconnected due to human error. 2 hours later, it blamed an employee, saying, quote, "We have learned that this was done by a Twitter customer support employee who did this on the employee's last day. We are conducting a full internal review."
It could be a breakdown in protocol or it was a rogue employee on their last day.
Why do some doubt Twitter? Deactivating a top account is serious. Few believe one low-level employee has sole authority to do so.
This individual, if he has the ability to take things down, may have had the ability to actually tweet on the president's behalf.
330 million use Twitter. Its biggest stars are actors and musicians, but few tweets carry the influence of the president, and that's the risk.
He could have said something like, "We're going to blow up North Korea tomorrow. Get ready." and all of a sudden all chaos looms in the diplomatic world and the military world and worldwide.
So when somebody says something about me, I'm able to go bing, 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 and I take care of it.
Critics complain Trump violates Twitter rules threatening others, like Kim Jong-un or calling for the death penalty. But Twitter says it judges newsworthy items by a different standard. Trump addressed his brief termination, saying, "My Twitter account was taken down for 11 minutes by a rogue employee. I guess the word must finally be getting out and having an impact." Twitter said it has implemented safeguards to prevent this from happening again. Now, while in Asia, we'll have to see if China can do something no one in the White House could: stop Trump from tweeting, as China's censors do not allow it for their 1.3 billion residents. In Los Angeles, William Lajeunesse, Fox News.
A full legislative plate for lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and now they are making room for Arctic drilling, a debate that goes back decades. Coming up, the strong reaction from both sides of the political aisle. And here's Jesse Waters with a look at what's ahead next hour.
Ann Coulter, Tommy Lauren, and a shrink who treats Trump anxiety disorder, plus a classic Waters World quiz.
That's right after the Fox Report, right here on the Fox News Channel. We will be right back. A decades-long debate renewed as the Senate takes up the prospect of drilling for oil in the Arctic. The controversial topic, which some think will kickstart the economy, while others see it as a major threat to the environment. Dan Springer is in Anchorage, Alaska, with more.
As part of his goal to make America energy dominant, President Trump has reopened the decades-long debate over oil drilling in the coastal plain of Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
This is positive for our country, positive for our economy, positive for our national security.
We will resist their unbelievable attempts to turn public lands over to polluters.
The arguments mirror those made in 2005 when Republicans controlled Congress and the White House but failed to approve ANWR drilling. Now, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee is attempting to raise $1 billion by selling oil leases in ANWR, a plan that would be part of the larger tax reform bill. Many Democrats and environmental groups call it a sneak attack that would defile a pristine jewel.
The massive amount of infrastructure that would be needed in order to develop in the Arctic Refuge coastal plain would undoubtedly have significant impacts to the environment there.
But supporters say one thing that has changed in the last decade is drilling techniques. Much longer horizontal drilling allows for a far smaller footprint on the surface. In 1998, the U.S. Geological Survey estimated there's 10 billion barrels of oil in the 1002 area, a small strip of the 19 million acre ANWR.
It might be as big as a Prudhoe Bay field. And those giant fields do not come along very often. They are the elephants. They are these huge, giant plays that can produce for 40 years.
12 years ago, the same effort to open Area 1002 failed because of moderate Republicans. Since then, all but two have left Congress, and those remaining, Senators John McCain and Susan Collins, say they're now open to this contentious drilling. Beyond ANWR, though, Fox News has learned that the Interior Department is looking for an even larger move towards American energy dominance, opening exploration elsewhere. In Anchorage, Dan Springer, Fox News.
A deadly typhoon slamming into Vietnam's south-central coast, killing at least 15 people and leaving 4 others missing. Widespread blackouts were reported in the region and dozens of flights were canceled. Officials say the typhoon destroyed more than 300 homes and blew roofs off of more than 25,000 others. House Speaker Paul Ryan touting the tax reform plan as a way to help middle-class Americans. Tomorrow, he'll speak exclusively with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday. You can catch that interview right here on the Fox News channel. Check your local listings for time. And, of course, she was a shining star in the prime of her life, when she was senselessly murdered. How Hollywood is making sure Selena Quintanilla is never forgotten. Huge honor for legendary Tejano singer Selena Quintanilla. More than 20 years after her death. The singer received a posthumous star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame yesterday. Her family attending the ceremony as thousands of fans looked on. The late singer now joins other major celebrities on one of showbiz's most visible landmarks. The 23-year-old Grammy-winning singer was becoming a crossover sensation when she was shot and killed by the president of her fan club in 1995. Oh my God, I can't wait for that hour of sleep. I hope my kids sleep in. My favorite day of the year. Finally, daylight saving time coming to an end. Bon voyage for most Americans tonight. So we will all get an extra hour of sleep, fingers crossed. But it's apparently not all good news, as our bodies reportedly adjust to the change very slowly. And Swedish researchers, man, this is a Debbie Downer, say that they found a 5% increase in the risk of a heart attack right after daylight saving time began. Well, that's a bummer. I guess I can't be so excited about that. Anyway, that is how Fox reports this Saturday, November 4th, 2017. Thanks for watching. Water's World starts right now.